This is Elphaba. You probably know her better as the Wicked Witch of the West. But here's the thing, she was never supposed to be wicked. Not at first, anyway. Her tragic secret? She didn't build her own villainous reputation. The world built it for her. And once the world decides who you are, you only have two choices: fight it or own it. And in branding, that's a powerful and dangerous choice. A rebel brand can become iconic. It can turn into the alternative to the mainstream. It can dominate its niche, rally a cult following, and shake an industry to its core. Or it can self destruct. Elphaba learned this the hard way. She didn't want to be a villain, but when Oz branded her as one, she made a fateful decision. She leaned in. She built an entire identity around what people already believed about her. It was the only move she had left, and that's why her branding was doomed from the start. This is how Elphaba accidentally became the most powerful rebel brand in Oz, and why, in the end, that brand destroyed her. Let's get into it. Elphaba's story begins with a fundamental marketing problem. What happens when the market rejects you before you even start? She is born different. And in branding terms, different is another word for untrustworthy. From the moment she arrives, she doesn't fit the market demand. She's green. People don't like it. And first impressions, they stick. Ask any company that's tried to change how the world sees them. It's hard. Tesla knows this struggle. In the early 2000s, electric cars were considered weak, unreliable, and basically fancy golf carts. Nobody took them seriously. Tesla had to fight tooth and nail to change that perception. And they did it by positioning themselves as a luxury brand first and an electric car second. Or take Airbnb. When it launched, the idea of staying in a stranger's house instead of a hotel sounded insane. People thought it was sketchy. It took years of branding, customer reviews, and cultural shifts before Airbnb became the giant it is today. Elphaba doesn't have years. She gets one shot to change public perception. And that shot is the wizard. This is where everything changes. Elphaba believes that if she proves herself, she'll finally be accepted. That the wizard, Oz's biggest authority figure, will see her talent, recognize her power, and give her a place in the world. Instead, he does what any powerful institution does when it wants to maintain control. He spins the story. And just like that, Elphaba is the villain of Oz. The public buys it instantly. No questions asked. Because, let's be honest, people love a villain. And once a brand has a negative reputation, good luck getting rid of it. Just ask Uber. In the 2010s, Uber was the cool, disruptive startup. Then came the scandals, allegations of a toxic work culture, shady business practices, a CEO who treated the company like his personal frat house. Uber's reputation tanked. They fired the CEO, overhauled leadership, and ran apology campaigns. And yet, years later, a lot of people still associate Uber with its worst moments. Or BP. Remember the Deepwater Horizon oil spill? It was one of the worst environmental disasters in history. BP spent billions on cleanup, rebranding, and advertising to fix its image. But even now, over a decade later, people still think of oil spills when they hear BP. Once public perception turns against you, it is almost impossible to undo. And Elphaba? She knows she can't fight it. So she makes a choice. If the world wants her to be wicked, she's going to give them wicked. Trademark. This is what we call rebel branding. Rebel brands don't try to fit in. They lean in to being different. They take their outsider status and turn it into power. Harley Davidson is a perfect example. Instead of making motorcycles seem safe or family friendly, they embraced the outlaw image. They made their brand synonymous with rebellion and freedom. Instead of attracting everyone, they built a die-hard, fiercely loyal customer base. Or look at Liquid Death. It's just bottled water, but it's marketed like a hardcore energy drink for metalheads. It's edgy, it's rebellious, and it works because it found an audience that wants that kind of branding. That's exactly what Elphaba does. If the people of Oz are going to fear her no matter what, then fine. She's going to own that fear. She gives herself a look. The black dress, the flying broom, the dramatic entrances. She builds a brand identity around the image that's already been forced on her. And it works for a while. But here's the problem with rebel brands. The same thing that makes them powerful also makes them unsustainable. If you build your entire brand around being the outsider, you don't get to evolve. Look at MySpace. In the early 2000s, MySpace was the social media platform. It was cool, it was customizable, it let you put obnoxious music and glittery GIFs on your profile. But it refused to adapt. And when Facebook came along with a cleaner, more professional experience, MySpace died. Or take Napster. It revolutionized music sharing. It was disruptive, rebellious, and totally illegal. And instead of evolving into a sustainable business model that wasn't illegal, it just disappeared. That's Elphaba's biggest mistake. She never pivots. She never finds a way to rebrand. She locks herself into the wicked role so completely that she isolates herself from any possible allies. And eventually, that's what destroys her. So, what could she have done differently? Some brands start as rebels and successfully transition into the mainstream. Apple is a prime example. Back in the 90s, Apple was the cool alternative computer company, the underdog fighting against big bad Microsoft. But they knew they couldn't stay the underdog forever, so they evolved. They became the industry leader without losing their core brand identity. Nike did something similar. They weren't just a sneaker company, they built an entire lifestyle brand around athleticism, personal achievement, and cultural relevance. They expanded without losing what made them stand out. The key to long-term success isn't just being different, it's knowing when to evolve. Elphaba never gets that chance. She committed so fully to her rebel brand that she backed herself into a corner. She became too iconic as the villain to ever change the narrative. Defying gravity is great, but defying your trope is greater. In the end, Elphaba's tragic secret is this. Being a rebel can make you powerful, but if you don't control your narrative, it will control you. The wizard won not because he was stronger, but because he controlled the story. And in branding, whoever controls the narrative controls the market. Rebel brands can change the world, but if they don't evolve at the right time, the market will erase them. And so did Elphaba, with the help of a bucket of water.